Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of the Mental Toughness and Body Show. On this show today, we are talking about one of my personal favorites, mental toughness, resilience, and change. Now, some people say that perhaps you're born this way with mental toughness. Others say that we have to create it. And so we're going to get into that conversation today with our special guest who is going to just blow you away with her experience and insights. I'm really fascinated by what we're about to discuss. Now, obviously, on this podcast, we have interviewed people from all walks of life, from A-list celebrities to billionaires to Olympic gold medalists. And today we have a CEO, coach, an international speaker, and author, Lynne Peyton. And it is a pleasure to have you on the show. Lynne, how are you?
I'm great, Rob, and it's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you for asking.
Thank you indeed. So I wanted to maybe just to give our audience a little bit of an idea about you, Lynne. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit about your background and I suppose maybe some of those early influences that, or maybe not early, but just influences in your life to work in the space that you do, because it's quite unique.
So I trained as a social worker, and even that was an interesting story because I set out to be a French. I really wanted to teach French. I thought that would be very glamorous. And in my A-level year, the year I was leaving school to go to university, I worked in a holiday camp in England. And I suppose for the first time was exposed to people who were involved in seasonal jobs, who had no job security, who had all different life experience, people who had served time in different detention centres. And I just realised there was a whole myriad out there that I knew nothing about and that I had a really sheltered existence. So I got the boat back from England to Ireland and I changed my course from languages to social care. And the rest is history. So I've been involved in mainly child protection and mental health social work throughout my career and graduated through the ranks and was a senior manager in the public sector social services arena, and then a director of a not-for-profit children's charity. And then in 2001, I set up my own business because I got frustrated, Rob, at the pace of change in big bureaucracies. And I thought, well, I wonder if you can't change from the inside. Could I consult to those organizations and maybe affect change from the outside? And I did a lot of work for many years reviewing complex cases, working for organizations like the Safeguarding Board, looking at situations where children died or were seriously injured, leading multidisciplinary reviews. And I find that I always made the same recommendation, despite all the specific recommendations. I always said we need to improve the context within which our professionals are delivering services. And we need to empower them and their leadership to make decisions and make empowered decisions. And that we have to create a culture where people doing tough jobs actually feel supported in their work. So for the rest is history. I designed the core leadership program. I deliver it to organizations, mainly in Ireland, but with really good success. And I suppose my greatest joy, Rob, is when you meet people 10 years later and they say, and you probably get this same thing in your work, when people say, I still remember that thing you said, or I hear your voice in my head whenever I get stuck. So I suppose for me, that's really what inspires me and motivates me to still work at my age. It's because I'm hoping every day that I add value to those special people out there who work in the public sector and in the not-for-profit sector, helping empower them so that they do great work with children and families.
So you've just raised a really great point there, and I really feel the same way. But you've had a lot of success through your career, through your businesses, and I know that you and your husband have like really into investing and so forth as well. So you're really well set up. You don't have to work, but you choose to at your age. I'm 55 and I don't feel like I've even reached my peak yet. Like I just love what it is that I do. So tell us a little bit about why you and your husband still find that you can contribute and you love what you do.
Yeah, well, he's 75 and I'm 70, and we just don't know what retirement would look like. We have a
Yes.
very interesting, balanced life. We travel a lot, as you know, through one of the groups that we're involved in.
Yes.
We get to meet all over the world. So we make time for that, but yet we're still really committed to adding value in our spheres of influence. And I suppose people define success differently. And for me, it's peace of mind. It's also feeling at the end of every day. At the end of every day, I just ask myself, where did I add value today? And, you know, what else could I have done to be even better? Because you probably haven't peaked yet. I don't know what peak is, because
Yeah.
life's a journey. Life's a journey. And, you know, like tomorrow, we might learn something radically new, and I hope I do. And then I'll be able to integrate that into my work, both in the investment properties, but more especially in the work with the people I work with in the public sector and the not-for-profit sector.
Yeah, wonderful. I mean, I'm with you. I don't think I know what life would look like if I said, okay, tomorrow everything ends and you've got to just go sit on a beach or something somewhere. I mean, that would be horrible. The sense of accomplishment at the end of each day, knowing that you've added value to somebody, or you've potentially changed someone's life, or in the space you're working, maybe save someone's life. Well, me too. It's just different. Mine's a longer term sort of thing, or I could add, 5, 10, 15, 20 years to someone's life by getting them to change some lifestyle habits now. So I think that's awesome. Well done for you and your husband for living such an amazing life and adding so much value. So let's dig into mental toughness. Tell me what it is that you would define as mental toughness and why you believe it's so important.
Well, I'm so glad that you focus on this topic, Rog, because I think people have to be mentally tough these days. And, you know, I just finished reading the Sunday papers, and the stories of challenge that people are facing are really quite incredible. But we encounter situations which could knock us off balance every day of the week, and they could be small things. It could be how someone speaks to us on the telephone. It could be an email. I'm going to be offering a mediation service later this week over an exchange of emails, because people need to remember, when you write that email, you can't take it back. Don't push send until you're absolutely sure that you want the other person to read it. But the slightest thing, I think, can knock us off balance if we don't learn some basic rules. First of all, when people are angry, it's usually about them and not about us.
Yes.
Secondly, we need to know what triggers us. What are the things that actually hurt, offend, frustrate us, make us angry, make us feel guilty? So I just think it's really, really important that we work on ourselves. And that's why the work you're doing is so, so valuable. I've been working on myself for about 25 years. I think the journey started with Tony Robbins. I did my first fire walk in, I think it was 1999 in Geneva.
Yeah, wow.
And at that point, I stopped drinking coffee. I never smoked again. You know, so sometimes there are events that just give us those wake-up calls that we really needed. And other times the realization comes more slowly. So I studied suffering in India for 10 days, and that was just amazing. And the lasting memory from that is suffering is a choice. Loss and grief are real. But if you're still choosing to suffer years after an event, then that's a choice. So we all owe it to ourselves and all the people around us to actually make sense of whatever happens to us and to choose to get the learning from it and move on. So for me, that toughness comes from examining anything that triggers a negative emotion and trying to better understand, sit with it until I understand it, and then recognize what's about the other person, what's about the event, and what bit do I personally need to deal with so that I can get the learning, integrate the learning, and move on. Because everything is about learning.
Yeah, beautifully said. I I think if I reflect on myself as to how I've come to do this show and how I've become resilient and more mentally tough, I think it does come down to doing the work in terms of, like you said, uncovering. So what are the triggers for you? How do you get beyond the pain of certain things? How do you come up with greater definitions for why you should keep moving forward as opposed to it all just stops? What do you think is the reason? And I guess this is related to change as well. Like, you and I both know most people don't want to change, and they don't change. They remain the same, or they regress. Why do you think it is becoming harder? We hear stories about, say, the next generation, like my girls and so forth, as to how hard it is for them. But I'm sure our parents said the same thing about us. And why do you think people are saying that this next generation is not as resilient as the last? And why do people just not want to change? Is it because is it too much hard work? People don't want to reflect and uncover and identify things like those triggers?
Think possibly two different questions there. First, is it harder for young people today? I absolutely think it is. And I think that's because of social media and the fact that they're exposed to so much more information than we ever had. And then we've got online trolling and bullying and all of those things that, the last generation really didn't have to cope with, and our generation certainly didn't have to cope with. And then the second thing I think that makes it harder is our boundaries aren't as clear anymore. I'm really huge on the whole issue of boundaries in relationships, and boundaries between work and personal life, what you share and when. And I think, and then boundaries about timings and where people go and who they associate with. So I think my children are all in their late 30s now, so I'm past that stage. But for people like there who's still raising children, you have to parent those children, and parenting is about setting effective boundaries. And all children push back and resist. It's our role as parents to make sure that we safeguard them by ensuring that we limit their exposure to dangerous things, and also that we know where they are and what they're up to, and most importantly, who they're with. So we raised our children during the Troubles in Northern Ireland. It was really important that I knew where they were. And my house was the house where kids congregated in, and then me and other parents knew where they were and knew they were safe. So I think the first thing is we have to have boundaries for young people, and we have to help them set those boundaries until they're able to be emotionally intelligent enough to set their own boundaries. And then I can't remember the second part of the question, Robin.
Do you know what? Either can I now. I was asking about the change. Like, why do you think?
Change. Why are so many people resistant to change?
Yes.
I think it's about that we are coping with change all the time. Change is all around us. Change is in everything we do. And I think people sometimes say, enough, I can't cope with any more change. And they look for that place that is comfortable. But we all know that when you get too comfortable, it becomes uncomfortable, because you get kind of that sense of being frustrated that nothing is happening. So I think the problem with most change nowadays is that sometimes it's not managed well, and that's true in big organizations particularly. And if we think about change management, the first thing is we have to understand who is going to be impacted by the change. And then we need to get them on board so they understand the need for the change, and most importantly, how the change is going to be effective. Secondly, we must communicate on an ongoing basis every step of the way as to what is happening now. And then the third thing is there have to be milestones along the way. So when you check in and see, is it working? And if not, do we have to tweak it a wee bit? And then we have to celebrate all the little steps about change, and keep reminding people that this is a journey and we're getting there a little bit at a time, but we forget to keep communicating and we forget to celebrate the wins along the way. And then, you know, at the end, we need to check in with people and see, well, what was the impact of that change on them? And as employees, or employers, or as coaches or whatever, we need to check, how can we make the change more acceptable, more tolerable, whatever, to the people involved?
Great points, Lynn. You mentioned earlier, I want to go back a little bit about you've been working on yourself for 25 years. Okay, this is kind of relevant. You can go first and I'll go second. What took so long? Why has it only been 25 years, do you think?
Do you know what? It's not done yet, Rob. You're absolutely right. But what I do know is that it gets easier the more you understand human behavior. So
That
I
is
was
so true.
on the faculty of Tony Robbins for very many years. I supported many of his events like Date with Destiny, Unleash the Power Within, fabulous, fabulous events that everybody should do because Tony's an absolute master. But in order to help other people work through their breakthroughs and their frustration at those events, we always had to be trained and do refresher and do reflection exercises. Because you can't be in that place where you help other people be emotionally resilient if you're not willing to do that self-examination.
Yes.
And then I moved on and worked with organizations like Success Resources International. I studied NLP and neuroscience, and I'm a master prac in NLP with Steve Linder and Success Strategy Resources International. Yeah, and in all of those, I think because you get to stop blaming yourself and you stop blaming other people. I think blame is the single most damaging kind of emotion. And when you learn to stop blaming yourself and stop blaming other people and accept sometimes that it just is, and also be willing to accept your own part in things that didn't go well, be willing to say sorry, be willing to recognize that something was clumsy, hurtful, whatever, and put it right.
Yes. For me, I think like the point of change comes from, you know, if you think about those big pivotal moments in your own life, I've probably named 3 or 4 where I know the exact moment, exactly what happened to make me change that decision. To make that decision. And it's kind of like, all right, I'm going east my whole life. And it's like, no, I'm going west because of, do you know what I mean? That one thing that's happened. And I think for me, like I was married with my wife for about 20 years. And after about 6.5 years of what I considered working hard at it, decided that, you know, we needed to go our separate ways. We still get on very, very well together. She lives less than a kilometer away from me now. But I carried it was through that process. And in the years later, I felt quite resentful. Like there was blame and so forth on my part, not that I've verbalized, just internalized about, you know, why things didn't work. And then I realized that I was playing a victim in a lot of things in my life. And I said, you know what? You're too old for that crap. You've got to do better. And I just decided that I wanted to change every aspect of my life. And so I was hungry. I was looking for some way to change. And my way that I found it was, I thought, I don't know what to do, but why don't I just listen to YouTube and type in motivation, inspiration. I did that and I was listening to it for hours, just in the background a day while I'm working away. I was like, actually, this is really good. And then some same voices would come up time and time again. I'm like, that was the same voice from here. And then, you know, you hear it more and more and think, I'm going to find out who that is. And hence I found Tony Robbins. And then I thought, this guy's really cool. So let me get one of his CDs. And then I got one of his programs. And then I got Unleash the Power Within. And then I thought, I need to go to one of his events because everything he was saying was resonating with me. And then I went to an Unleash the Power Within and I thought, wow, this is really powerful. And so I'm very grateful for the work that I did with Tony. I pretty much did every one of his programs. I didn't do Date with Destiny, but all of his, like online programs, CDA programs and stuff, I did them all. And it really changed the way that I viewed myself and the world. And I stopped becoming a victim. And all of a sudden, there couldn't be anything negative that happened in my life that I could see it in a negative way. Everything was a positive because of the questions that I was asking to myself. So I guess that's a long way around of saying about how we communicate with ourselves is just so important. And I didn't realize just how toxic the words were that I would never say to anyone. Like I would never say, oh, Lynne, you're a disgrace or you're this, that, or the other. But the language, if I wrote it down, what I was saying to myself was appalling. And I thought, I need to change that. And now, of course, so you've been going in at 25 years. I picked up a book when I was 16 years old called The Power of Positive Mental Attitude, and I never finished the book. And it wasn't until I was 42, so probably 13 years ago, that I started. But it's really only since been working with JT in the last 6 years that my life has gone way further. Like I went so far with Tony, but it didn't add to my bank account. And I've just, like, the DNA of my thinking now has just completely changed because I realized I was in so much pain. I was never going to reach my potential with that toxic energy I was living in with myself. And then realizing that, do you know what? I'm surrounding myself with a lot of toxic crap as well. And I need to eliminate that. So what's your perspective on communication?
Well, I wanted to just pick up on the differentiation between what we learned from Tony Robbins and what you and I have learned from JT, because I had that very same experience in that JT's thinking has helped me, increase my bottom line, mainly as well as the work that I do on a day basis. I've also been a property investor for many, many years. But I saw it as a bit of a nuisance that I had to go and spend time checking in on the properties, checking in. And it was only when JT taught me to run it like a business and to get excited about it and passionate about it, that business has just grown exponentially now because of his business coaching.
Yes.
So it's very, very interesting that we had those similar experiences. But I do think it makes the point, Rob, that we need different coaches for different aspects of our life.
Yeah, absolutely.
You coach people on their physical toughness and their diet as well as their mental toughness, which is great. But sometimes we have to go to different coaches for different things. So I have 3 coaches. One is my Tony Robbins coach. Susie's been coaching me for 20 odd years now, and we have a session every couple of months. And then I have a coach from Success Resources. And what we do is we coach each other for half an hour each way once a month on all aspects of life, our kids, our social life, our marriage. I'm married 46 years now.
Wow. Congratulations.
If anybody tells you marriage is easy, that's not
No.
true. We're still working at it 46 years later. And he
Good on
still
you.
introduces me as his first wife, Rob, just in case, and then I have JT, who is my business and wealth development coach.
Yes.
And all of those, I need all those amazing people in my life because I'm still working on all of those things.
Would you say now at this stage of your life, do you think you're slowing down? Do you think you've got that work-life balance right? Do you want to slow down or do you want to speed up?
Well, no, I was on a conference call on a Sunday night until 11 o'clock my time yesterday. No, I have no intention of slowing down. I'm definitely traveling more, but I just agreed to give a talk at a university in Australia when I go to visit my son. So,
Oh, wow.
So I'm really excited about that. And everywhere I go, I try to see, well, where could I add value or where could I learn something on this trip? I'm going to Japan this year. That's purely holiday, but I am meeting one of our colleagues from our group when I'm there. And who knows, between this and then I might explore it and see if there's some way I can learn something about how they run children's services in Japan. So no intention of slowing down. They'll be carrying me out and I'll still have the notebook in my hand.
It sounds like you're still hungry, just like me. You just have a hunger for knowledge, and like I hope people really understand, like the adding value is just so important. I mean, JT talks about it all the time, but adding value to relationships, just adding value to everywhere you go, and whatever you want will come your way. But if you're also open to learning something new every day, or I guess it's not always possible to learn something every day, but if you're just open to that environment of learning, then, I mean, you said at the very start, success looks different to many people, but I think if you can see your life as progressing, i.e. you're growing, you're learning, then to me, that's happiness, because it's when you're staying the same or going backwards that I think life becomes boring.
Absolutely. And, you know, we know that all learning takes place outside of our comfort zone, and that we have to push ourselves and stretch ourselves to do different things. And some of the unhappiest people I know in the work environment can be the people then who contribute to that, a word you used earlier, a sort of toxicity in the workplace, are those people that are stuck. They're the people that tell themselves they don't want to do anything else or try anything else, and yet they're frustrated because it's in our DNA, isn't it, that we need to be growing and developing. And Tony Robbins puts it beautifully. He says, if you look at nature and you look at plants and trees, everything's either growing or dying. You know, there is no standing still. So, you know, it's your job and my job to help people become more resilient. That's really the essence of what we do, to help people to be able to not just cope with change, but to actually influence and drive change in a positive direction. And in order to do that, they have to step up.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Lynne, I've just got a couple more questions. I mean, we could be talking for hours here. I'm really enjoying our conversation here.
Me
What would you
too.
say, let's get to know you a little bit more. What would you say is one of your superpowers, your strengths, if you like?
I never quit. I
Yep.
think I got that from my dad. My father always used to say the only day he was beaten was the day he didn't show up. And he always said, if you show up, you'll always find a way. So I think that's very much what is my superpower. I'm always thinking, what am I not seeing? There's got to be a way. Who else could help me? And I think the other thing that's so critical is, if I don't know what to do or how to do it, I know somebody who knows what to do or how to do it.
Yeah, very
So
resourceful.
relationships are so important. And it's one of the things that I find post-COVID people have to relearn, is to make those relationships and make them on a one-to-one basis, make them on a face-to-face basis. Because COVID, a lot of people retreated, didn't they, Rob,
Yes.
into their own smaller world. And I find nowadays I'm constantly coaching people on the need to have networks, the need to have mentors, the need to have go-to people. And then you and I both know, if you're constantly adding value, then if you need something, you've got your choice of people to pick from. Because it's not that, you talked about reciprocity earlier on, and it's not that, you know, you're given because you want something back. You're given because it's the right thing to do.
Yes.
And because you're in that mode, when you need something, there will be people there for you.
And you need to make it a priority too. I think we say, oh yeah, I must get in touch with Lynne. Oh yeah, I must do that. I must do it. And people just don't do it. I put time in my calendar every day to work on relationships. And it's written as that in my calendar to make sure that I do it, because I didn't used to do it. And then you find time goes by and you just forget about people and you just move on. What would be, in contrast to your superpower, what would be something that you find is a bit of a struggle for you?
Oh, I don't know about that one. I tend to just get on with things. I'm trying to think, what do I procrastinate over? No, you know what? I just really get on with things. The thing I used to struggle with was I used to see our property investments as just an inconvenience. And then once I got into them and turned them into a business, and I make the time, because your point is so real, we have to diary and schedule things. But now we have a property portfolio of student houses in Scotland, and we've good student houses. Our students, I pride myself on having good houses. So the students come back and refer their friends, and we don't have much to do to fill them on an ongoing basis. And I've got a superb property manager over there. I've got a great bookkeeper, but I've got all the systems in place where once a month I just have to review the income statement, if you like. And then every 6 months I have a proper review with all the players involved. And the same in America. I've got a portfolio in America, which grew organically. And then in 2008 fell on its face in the Grand Recession. And I made some terrible mistakes. And the biggest one was getting too big for my boots and actually extending both financially and practically beyond what I was capable of dealing with. And I couldn't have hands on it anymore. But we figured that all out. We dusted ourselves off. We worked here and sent money out there to make sure that, that everything was we built it all back up again. And we had a few lean years until we got everything resolved. And then I suppose the biggest lesson from there is cash is king. You know, if you haven't got cash flow, it doesn't work. So I've streamlined everything. So I only have cash flow in properties now. And I make it my business every quarter to sit down with all the people in America, make sure we have a plan and we know what we're doing and there are no surprises. And I think the other thing is supporting all the people who help me in whatever way I can support them. And that's not necessarily just the business things I know about. Nobody ever leaves me, but everybody's worked with me for years and years and years and years. So including our staff here at home. The longest one's here 25 years.
Wow.
But growing and developing with us and still interested and involved and engaged. Yeah, I think if I'm struggling with anything, I figure out what's my struggle.
Yes.
And then when I can name it and analyze it, then I can plan to address it.
2 more questions. What would you say is sorry, I can't speak properly. Your biggest peeve, whether it's about people or in business, or what annoys you? I say peeve, do you know what I mean? The different boundaries may mean different things. What really annoys you?
I think currently it's when higher level management in organizations don't recognize the importance that retaining staff nowadays is absolutely everything. And to retain staff, you have to provide good leadership and you have to have a culture in the organization. And what is culture? Culture is how the organization is experienced by the people who live and work in it on a daily basis. So if organizations do staff surveys and then don't get the learning from the results, or if they don't lead by example, and if they keep, I suppose the Einstein thing, keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So I suppose my biggest peeve is frustration that higher level management often do not get the learning from experience and be willing to change. And I think a lot of times that comes from arrogance. And other times it comes from inexperience and not having appropriately experienced people in those higher leadership positions.
Because obviously you're going into organizations and speaking to the, the highest levels. Do you find that you're sitting in meetings with people sometimes and you ask yourself, how in the world did you get into this position? You should just wonder how somebody doesn't know the answers to things, or they just have absolutely no leadership skills or very poor leadership skills. And you think, how did you
Too
get?
often, Rob, too often,
Yeah,
I'm
not
afraid.
just me then.
But the other thing is, though, um, all too often you're trying to simplify things for people. They
Mm,
have overcomplicated things to an amazing degree. And I think one of the other challenges is layer upon layer upon layer of management.
Mm,
So that decisions sometimes go up and get stuck and the answers never come back down. My belief is we should empower people at the lowest level in organizations, consistent with delivering the service. I also think that we should recognize the importance of the work that people do in the front line. And especially in the kind of arena I'm in, mental health and children's services, they're offering trauma-informed services all the time. They're absorbing other people's pain and trauma, and they
yes.
need to be nurtured in order to do that work effectively. But
Yes.
nurturing isn't just about hand-holding. Nurturing requires empowering them to do all the things we've talked about today. To ride the storm, to navigate the bumps in the road, to work on themselves, to say, well, do you know what, that was a tough interview, but I gave it my best shot.
Yes.
And I love feedback. So, but doing feedback in a way that is empowering,
Yes.
what went well and why
Not
did it go well?
criticism.
Because you prepared, because you had the skill set. What would you do to make it even better next time? Even's my favorite word because there's no judgment.
Yes.
How could you make it even better next time round? But really coaching people so they analyze it for themselves. Too often feedback is somebody else telling us what they
Yes.
thought about it, whereas the real learning, as you know, comes when somebody asks us great questions and we get to analyze our own performance, our own contribution.
Yes.
So coaching is critical. Mentoring is critical as well, and we need to know the difference.
Yes. Final question, because you've had so much success, and I love that you're still as hungry as you are, and you're still, you can just tell through the energy, through the screen, and just how excited you are about the day, and like what you don't know what's coming, but you're just excited about it. What would a typical day for you look like? And you can incorporate in there, if you like, what you do from a health and wellness perspective, etc. But I think it'd be really interesting to just get an insight. I like to ask my successful people about what their typical day looks like.
So it starts the day before, because I always check in to make sure I know what's coming up, and I plan weeks ahead, but I always check at night that I'm ready and set up for the day. Don't get up as early as you. I'm a 6:30 starter. And then I like my cup of tea and my thinking time before I start everything else. And my routine varies depending on whether I'm going out to deliver workshops in Dublin or somewhere, or whether I'm actually doing online coaching sessions. Typically, I would have a number of coaching sessions, and mine normally last an hour. And then I reflect on those afterwards so that I know where I'm going in the next session. And then a lot of businessy things, but I spend a lot of my day interacting with other people. I do my 10,000 steps every day. That's my go-to. And
Nice.
I'm careful about my diet as well. So, salads at lunchtime. And my husband actually discovered he was diabetic type 2 during COVID.
Oh, okay.
So we changed our diet completely. He lost 60 pounds. He controls the diabetes solely with diet. And in order to support him, I changed. So we learned all about sugar and whatever. So I've got a very healthy diet. And the other thing is I walk with a friend most days. I love walking with her because she's nothing to do with my day work. And I go to dancercise once a week, badminton once a week.
Nice.
We always do something fun. We have a dinner. We go to our local pub for dinner on a Friday night, and we always do something different at the weekend. So lots of
Yeah,
fun
nice.
and lots of exercise, but not desperately aggressive exercise at our stage. But yeah, fit it all in.
Yeah, well done. Look, Lynn, you've just delivered so much content here today. I mean, I think it's been amazing. Thank you so much. We could keep talking for hours, I know. Best way for people to reach out to you if they want to use your coaching services, just your website?
Yeah, the
Best
website
way?
is best, or they can email me at lynne@lynnepeyton.com.
All right, great. So I'm going to put those details below when I post this podcast. Thank you so much for today. I want to give you, firstly, I'll say everybody that's watching this, if you reach out to Lynn, please reach out, tell her what a great interview you thought this was. And Lynn, I'm going to give you the closing word. What would you like to say to the audience as we close out this episode?
Everything is possible. Just believe in yourself. Work on yourself. Listen to Rob's podcasts. Listen to Tony Robbins. There are so many, many wonderful speakers out there. And I suppose the main thing is, if you do have any challenges, talk to somebody. Pick up the phone to a friend, a colleague, whatever, but don't keep it to yourself. If you have a challenge, talk to somebody.
Great advice, Lynn. Thank you so much.